The cantina was dark and smoky. Strange smells filled the air from drinks that would kill most beings. In the corner, old soldiers sat around tables, telling stories of wars long past. The sound of different languages mixed together like a bad song. Zarthek sat at his usual table near the back wall. His thick, gray skin was covered in scars from battles across the galaxy. Where his left arm should have been, a metal limb moved with soft clicking sounds. His right leg was also metal from the knee down. A red cybernetic eye glowed in the darkness where his real eye used to be. Young beings from different worlds gathered around his table. They came here every few days to hear the old warrior tell his stories. Tonight, there was a group of Veltar with their blue skin and sharp teeth. A few Altarians sat nearby, their feathers changing colors with excitement. Even some Korthani youngsters were there, trying to look tough like their war hero. "Tell us about the Battle of Zirian Prime," said one young Veltar. His voice was high and eager. "The one where you held off 3 enemy ships with just your fighter." Zarthek looked at the young being and shook his head slowly. He lifted his drink with his metal hand. The glass looked tiny in his large fingers. "You all want to hear about glory," he said. His voice was rough, like rocks grinding together. "About brave charges and honor duels. About how we followed the old ways of war." The young aliens leaned forward. This was what they came to hear. Stories of heroes and victory. Tales that would make them feel proud of their people. But Zarthek did not smile. His good eye stared into his drink. The red cybernetic eye dimmed for a moment. "I have told you many stories," he continued. "About how the Korthani fleet broke the siege at Malinar. About the great duel between Admiral Veltok and the Hivrak Queen. About battles where we knew right from wrong." He took a long drink and set the glass down hard on the table. "But tonight, you want to hear about real war? About the kind of fighting that keeps old soldiers awake at night? About battles that changed how we think about everything?" The cantina grew quieter. Even beings at other tables turned to listen. Zarthek was known for his stories, but his voice sounded different tonight. Darker. "Then let me tell you about the humans." A Korthani youngster laughed. "Humans? Those soft pink beings who just joined the council? They barely have any ships. Their technology is cycles behind ours." Zarthek's cybernetic eye flared bright red. He turned to look at the young Korthani with both his real eye and his metal one. "Soft?" Zarthek repeated slowly. "You think humans are soft?" The laughter died around the table. Something in the old veteran's voice made everyone uncomfortable. "Let me tell you something, young warrior. I have fought the Hivrak swarms. I have faced the destroyer fleets of the Outer Rim. I have seen the worst that this galaxy has to offer." He leaned forward. "But nothing in all my years of war has frightened me as much as watching humans fight." An Altarian shifted nervously, her feathers turning pale blue. "But they seem so normal. They trade with us. They follow our laws. They even tell jokes." "Yes," Zarthek nodded. "They do all those things. They smile and shake hands and sign treaties. And that is exactly what makes them terrifying." He looked around the table at all the young faces watching him. "You see, most species fight the way they live. The Veltar charge straight ahead because they are proud. The Korthani use heavy weapons because we like to show our strength. The Hivrak swarm because that is their nature." Zarthek paused to take another drink. "But humans fight like they are not fighting at all. They fight like they are solving a problem. A very big, very complicated problem that needs to go away." The old bartender, a being so ancient that no one knew what species he was, moved closer to listen. He had heard every story told in this cantina for over 100 years, but even he had never heard Zarthek sound like this. "I was there," Zarthek continued, "when they first came to this part of the galaxy. We all thought they were just another young species. Maybe they would be good at trading. Maybe they would join one of our wars and learn how real warriors fight." He shook his head slowly. "We were so very wrong. A young Veltar spoke up. What happened? Did they attack someone? No, Zarthek said. That is not how humans work. They did not attack anyone. They watched. They learned. They waited. The cybernetic eye focused on each young face around the table. And when they finally did fight, we realized that everything we thought we knew about war was just playing games. The humans had studied us. All of us. Every species. Every tactic. Every weakness. But surely our fleets are stronger, said a Korthani. Our ships are bigger. Our weapons are more powerful. Zarthek laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. Strength? Power? These are not human concepts of war. Humans do not care about being stronger. They care about winning. And they will do anything at all, to make sure they win. The cantina was completely silent now. Even the music from the back room had stopped. I am going to tell you 3 stories, Zarthek said quietly. 3 stories about human wars. After you hear them, you will understand why this old soldier checks his door locks twice each night. Why I jump when I hear certain sounds. Why I pray to the ancient gods that humanity never decides we are their enemy. He finished his drink and signaled the bartender for another. The first story is about the siege of Kepler Station. The second is about the Scorched Worlds campaign. The third is about something called the Broken Chain Incident. Zarthek's metal fingers drummed against the table. When I am done, you will know why the galaxy should be very, very careful about making friends with humans. Because the only thing more dangerous than having humans as your enemy is thinking you understand what that really means. Zarthek's new drink arrived. He stared at it for a long moment before speaking again. The young aliens around his table waited without breathing. Kepler Station, he began slowly. It was a mining platform in the outer systems, rich in rare metals that both the Korthani Empire and the Veltar Confederation wanted. We had been fighting over it for 8 months. He took a sip and continued. It was a good war, an honest war, the kind where everyone knew the rules. We would attack their supply ships. They would attack ours. We would challenge their best fighter to single combat. They would do the same to us. A young Korthani nodded eagerly. The old ways of honor. Yes. Zarthek agreed. Honor. We bombarded military targets only. No civilians. No hospitals. No schools. When we captured enemy soldiers, we treated them well. When they captured ours, they did the same. He paused, his cybernetic eye glowing brighter. The Veltar had their fast ships and energy weapons. We had our heavy armor and plasma cannons. We were evenly matched. The battle could have gone on for years. Both sides were happy with this. Our young warriors got experience. Our weapon makers got to test new designs. It was almost like a giant training exercise. The old bartender refilled drinks around the table without being asked. He had learned to read Zarthek's moods over the years. This story needed strong drinks. Then the humans arrived, Zarthek said quietly. How many ships? Asked a Veltar youngster. 12 small vessels. Nothing impressive. We had over 100 ships in the area. The Veltar had 80. These human ships looked like cargo haulers with some weapons attached. Zarthek's metal fingers began tapping against his glass. Both our fleets sent messages to the humans. We told them this was a war zone. We asked them to choose a side or leave. We explained the situation and waited for their answer. What did they say? An Altarian asked. Nothing. The word hung in the air like smoke. Nothing at all. Their ships just moved to the edge of the system, far enough away that our weapons could not reach them, close enough that their sensors could see everything. Zarthek drank again. At first, we thought they were cowards, running away from a real fight. The Veltar Admiral, Keswick, sent another message. He offered them safe passage if they left immediately. Still nothing. For 3 weeks, the human ships just sat there, watching. Sometimes they would move to get a better view of our battles. Sometimes they would scan our ships when we fought. But they never attacked, never responded to our calls, never did anything. The young aliens looked confused. This was not how war stories usually went. We started to ignore them, Zarthek continued. 12 small ships against nearly 200? What could they do? So, we went back to our honest war. Our honor duels and formal battles. His cybernetic eye dimmed for a moment. That was our mistake. Zarthek leaned forward. On the 4th week, something strange happened. A Veltar supply convoy was supposed to arrive with food and ammunition. It never showed up. Admiral Keswick sent scouts to find out why. What happened to it? A Korthani youngster asked. Gone. Completely gone. Not destroyed. Not captured. Just missing. No wreckage. No distress calls. No trace of it anywhere. Zarthek's voice grew quieter. 2 days later, one of our ammunition ships disappeared. Then a Veltar medical supply transport. Then our food convoy. One by one, every supply ship that tried to reach the battle zone just vanished. The young aliens looked at each other nervously. The humans? Whispered an Altarian. We suspected, but we had no proof. Their ships were always at the edge of the system when supplies went missing. But they were nowhere near the trade routes. Our sensors never detected them attacking anything. Zarthek finished his drink and set it down hard. After 2 weeks of this, both fleets were running low on supplies. Admiral Keswick contacted me directly. He suggested we work together to find out what was happening to our ships. You cooperated with the enemy? A young Korthani asked in shock. The enemy we understood, Zarthek replied. The Veltar fight like we do. With honor. With rules. They were not our friends, but they were predictable. The humans were something else. He signaled for another drink. We sent a joint patrol to investigate. 20 ships, half Korthani and half Veltar, working together. We followed the supply routes. We checked every asteroid field and gas cloud. We found nothing. Zarthek paused as his drink arrived. Then we found everything. The table was completely quiet. Hidden in an old asteroid field, 3 systems away from Kepler Station. We found them. Hundreds of ships. All the missing supply vessels. Korthani and Veltar together. But they were not destroyed or captured. His metal hand gripped his glass tighter. They were empty. Completely empty. The crews were gone. The supplies were gone. The ships were just floating there like ghosts. What happened to the crews? Asked a Veltar, his blue skin pale with fear. We found them on a small moon nearby. All of them. Korthani and Veltar together. They were alive and healthy. They had food, water, shelter. Some were even playing card games. The young aliens stared at him. The humans had not hurt them. Had not even scared them. They had simply taken them. Moved them. Like pieces on a game board. 2.com. Tuver.com. Zarthek's cybernetic eye flared. That was when we realized what the humans had been doing for 5 weeks. They were not watching our battles. They were studying our supply routes, learning our patterns, planning. But how did they capture so many ships without fighting? A Korthani asked. That is what we wanted to know. So we asked the crews. What they told us changed everything. Zarthek leaned back in his chair. The humans did not attack with weapons. They attacked with information. They knew exactly when each supply ship would be alone. They knew which routes had no patrols. They knew when crews would be tired or distracted. Each ship was approached by one small human vessel. The humans would contact the captain and simply ask them to surrender. They would explain exactly how many ships the captain had, how many weapons, how many crew members. They would describe the captain's family back home. They would mention the captain's favorite food. The young aliens looked confused. They knew everything about everyone, Zarthek said slowly. Not from spies or torture. From watching. From listening. From being patient. And the crews just surrendered? Wouldn't you? Zarthek asked. When someone knows your ship better than you do? When they can tell you what you had for breakfast? When they explain, very politely, that your choice is to come with them or have your ship disabled and your crew left floating in space? He shook his head. By the time we found our people, both fleets were almost out of supplies. We could fight for maybe 3 more days, then we would have to choose. Abandon our claims to Kepler Station or watch our warriors starve. Zarthek's voice became very quiet. The humans had won a war without firing a single shot. They had not broken any laws, had not violated any treaties, had not even hurt anyone. They had simply made it impossible for us to continue fighting. What happened next? An Altarian whispered. Both fleets withdrew. The humans moved in and claimed Kepler Station for themselves. When we complained to the Galactic Council, they said the humans had done nothing wrong. They had not attacked anyone. They had simply rescued crews from disabled ships. Zarthek's cybernetic eye went dark for a moment. That was the first time I realized that humans do not think about war the way we do. We fight battles. They solve problems. And we were just a problem to be solved. The cantina had grown even quieter. Other beings at nearby tables had stopped their own conversations to listen to Zarthek. His first story had been disturbing, but this felt different, more personal. Zarthek stared at his drink for a long time before speaking again. The second story is harder to tell, he said finally. Because I was not just watching from far away, I was part of it. He looked around the table at the young faces watching him. 15 years ago, the Hyvarok swarm attacked the human colony worlds in the Centauri sector. You all know about the Hyvarok. Insect beings the size of shuttlecraft. They travel in massive swarms that can strip a planet bare in days. A young Veltar nodded. My grandfather fought them once. He said it was like trying to fight a storm. Your grandfather was wise, Zarthek agreed. The Hyvarok are not evil. They are just hungry. They eat everything on a world, and then move on to find more food. Most species try to negotiate with them or evacuate when they come. Zarthek's metal fingers drummed against the table. The humans had 5 colony worlds in that sector. Small places with maybe 1 million people each. When the swarm arrived, they sent out distress calls asking for help. Did anyone respond? Asked an Altarian. The Galactic Council debated sending aid. But by the time we agreed on a plan, 3 of the human worlds were already consumed. The swarm was massive. Billions of Hyvarok. Even our combined fleets would have struggled against them. Zarthek paused to drink. We expected the humans to evacuate their remaining colonies. That is what any sensible species would do. Fight a delaying action while civilians escape to safety. His cybernetic eye flickered, but the humans did not evacuate. What did they do? A Korthani youngster asked. They followed the swarm. The young aliens looked confused. I do not understand, said a Veltar. The swarm was attacking them. Yes, it was. And after the Hyvarok finished eating the human colonies, they left to find more food. The swarm always moves on. That is their nature. Zarthek leaned forward, but this time they were followed. Human ships, not warships. Colony ships. Huge, slow vessels designed to carry families to new worlds. That makes no sense, protested a young Korthani. Why follow the beings that destroyed your worlds? Because, Zarthek said slowly, humans think differently about revenge than we do. We want to hurt our enemies quickly. We want them to pay for what they did right away. His voice grew darker. Humans are willing to wait. The old bartender moved closer, pretending to clean glasses while he listened. Even he had never heard this story. The human colony ships followed the Hyvarok swarm for months, through empty space, past dead systems, into parts of the galaxy where no sane being would go. Zarthek's metal hand gripped his drink tighter. The swarm led them to the poison worlds. Several young aliens gasped. Everyone knew about the poison worlds. A cluster of planets so toxic that even wearing full environmental suits, most beings died within hours. The Hyvarok had evolved on those worlds, Zarthek continued. The air burns your lungs if you breathe it. The water dissolves metal. The radiation cooks you slowly from the inside. Even the Hyvarok could only survive there because they had natural armor and special organs. So the humans turned back? Asked an Altarian hopefully. No, The word hit like a hammer blow. They sent messages back to what remained of human space. They told their people what they had found. They said the swarm was breeding on these poison worlds, creating the next generation of hive rock that would eat more colonies. Zarthek's cybernetic eye went very bright. And then they said something that still gives me nightmares. They said, "We are going to stop them. Not today. Not tomorrow. But we are going to stop them." We Gad. Into Gad. How could they survive on poison worlds? A young Korthani asked. They could not. Not the adults who made the journey. Their environmental suits failed within days of landing. The radiation killed most of them within weeks. The young aliens looked horrified. But humans, Zarthek continued quietly, do not think in terms of single lifetimes the way we do. They think in generations. He paused for a long drink. The colony ships were not just carrying adults. They carried children. And pregnant women. And genetic samples. And scientists who understood how living beings adapt to new environments. They were planning to evolve, whispered an Altarian, her feathers turning white with shock. Exactly. The first generation died quickly. Yes. But not before their children were born. Children who were exposed to the poison from birth, who breathed the toxic air and drank the burning water because that was all there was. Zarthek's voice became very quiet, and those children had children, who were even better adapted to the poison. And those children had children after them. The cantina was completely silent now. For 3 generations, humans lived on those poison worlds. They died young. They suffered constantly. But each generation was stronger than the last. Better able to survive in that toxic hell. What happened to the hive rack? A young Veltar asked. For 3 generations, they ignored the humans. Why would they worry about a few thousand aliens dying slowly on their breeding worlds? The humans seemed weak. Helpless. Not a threat. Zarthek's cybernetic eye flared. That was their mistake. By the 3rd generation, the humans were not really human anymore. Their skin was thick and gray to resist radiation. Their lungs could process the toxic air. Their blood carried special cells that fought off the poison. He leaned forward until his face was very close to the young aliens, and they were angry, so very, very angry. They had been born in hell and raised in suffering. All because of the hive rack swarm. What did they do? Whispered a Korthani. They started small, destroying a few egg clusters, poisoning some breeding pools. The hive rack noticed, but did not think it was important. Just a small pest problem. Zarthek smiled, but it was not a happy expression. But the humans kept growing stronger and smarter. They learned the swarm's patterns. They studied hive rack biology. They found weaknesses that no one else had ever discovered. Within 5 years, the breeding worlds were in chaos. Entire generations of hive rack eggs were being destroyed. The swarm could not reproduce fast enough to replace their losses. The hive rack finally tried to fight back. They sent their warriors to hunt down the human settlements. But how do you fight an enemy that can breathe poison and walk through radiation? How do you kill someone who has spent their entire life in hell? Zarthek finished his drink. The swarm fell apart. Without their breeding worlds, they could not replace their numbers. Within 10 years, one of the most dangerous forces in the galaxy was reduced to scattered survivors begging for sanctuary. The young aliens stared at him in horror. But the cost, whispered an Altarian. Those humans who adapted to the poison worlds, what happened to them? Some came back to normal human space. But they could no longer breathe clean air or drink pure water. They had to live in special habitats. Their own people called them heroes, but also feared them. Zarthek's voice became very soft. Others stayed on the poison worlds, made them their home. They are still there now, as far as I know. No longer fully human, but something new, something that chose to become monsters in order to destroy other monsters. He looked around the table. That is what frightens me about humans. They do not just fight wars. They pay any price to win them, even the price of their own humanity. Zarthek sat in silence for a long moment. His cybernetic eye had dimmed almost to darkness. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. The third story is the one that made me realize humans are not like any other species in the galaxy. Not even close. The young aliens leaned forward. They could see this story was different. More personal. Zarthek's metal hand was shaking slightly as he reached for his drink. It was called the Broken Chain Incident. I was there. I was part of it. He took a long drink before continuing. 2 years ago, a joint fleet was sent to explore the Malcarid Nebula. Ships from 12 different species working together. Scientific mission. Very peaceful. We were looking for new trade routes. A young Altarian nodded. I remember hearing about that mission. What you heard was probably the official report, Zarthek said bitterly. What really happened was much worse. His cybernetic eye flickered back to life. The nebula was not empty like we thought. There was a pirate base hidden inside it. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of raiders. They had been using the nebula to hide for years. What happened? Asked a Veltar youngster. Ambush. Complete surprise attack. Our fleet was scattered and outnumbered 10-1. Most of our ships were destroyed in the first few minutes. Zarthek's metal fingers drummed against the table. I was on the Korthani heavy cruiser Thunderbolt. We took heavy damage but managed to surrender before they finished us off. 17 other ships from our fleet also survived long enough to surrender. How many prisoners? A young Korthani asked. 8,000 beings from 12 different species. All crammed into transport ships and taken to a prison world deep in pirate territory. Zarthek paused to collect himself. The prison was on a mining planet. Asterion 7. Rocky world with toxic storms and barely breathable air. The pirates used prisoners as slave labor in the mines. Work until you die. Then they get new prisoners. The young aliens looked sick. Standard procedure in this situation is to negotiate, Zarthek continued. The Galactic Council contacts the pirates. We offer them money or trade goods in exchange for releasing prisoners. Sometimes, we agree to prisoner exchanges. Did that work? Asked an Altarian hopefully. The negotiations went on for months. The pirates wanted too much, more than our governments were willing to pay. Some prisoners were released in small groups, but most of us were written off as acceptable losses. Zarthek's voice became hard and bitter. After 6 months in the mines, we knew the truth. No rescue was coming. Our people had forgotten about us. We were going to die on that poison rock. He stared into his drink. That was when the humans arrived. How many ships? A young Veltar asked. 1. The word hung in the air like a challenge. 1 ship. Against an entire pirate fleet. Against a fortified world with defense satellites and ground weapons. We thought they were insane. Zarthek's cybernetic eye glowed brighter. The ship was called Indomitable. It was not even a warship, just a converted cargo hauler with some weapons attached, maybe 50 crew members. What did they do? Attack the orbital defenses? No. They sent a message to the prison planet. Not to the pirates. To us. To the prisoners. The young aliens looked confused. The message was simple. Zarthek continued. It said, "We are here to take you home. All of you. No one gets left behind." How could they even contact the prisoners? That was our first hint that humans are very good at doing impossible things. Somehow they had hacked into the prison communication system. Every speaker, every screen, every communication device on the planet carried their message. Zarthek leaned forward, but it was not just what they said. It was how they said it. The human who spoke did not sound like a military officer giving orders. He sounded like a father talking to lost children. The old bartender had stopped pretending to work. He was listening openly now. His ancient eyes wide with interest. The human told us about the people waiting for us at home. He knew names. He knew families. He told a Veltar prisoner that his daughter had learned to fly. He told a Korthani warrior that his mate was pregnant. How could they know such things? Whispered an Altarian. I asked myself the same question. Later I learned that humans have something they call military family support networks. When their soldiers are in danger, Entire communities work to help. They gather information. They send messages. They make sure no one is forgotten. Zarthek's voice grew softer. But the human did not stop at telling us about home. He started asking us questions. Not about military secrets or prison defenses. He asked us about ourselves. What kind of questions? He asked what we wanted to do when we got home. He asked about our dreams, our hopes, things we had thought about before we became prisoners. Zarthek's cybernetic eye dimmed for a moment. You have to understand. We had been slaves for 6 months. We had forgotten that we were anything other than prisoners. We had given up hope of ever being free again. But this human reminded us. He talked to us like we were still soldiers, still explorers, still people with futures worth fighting for. The young aliens were completely silent. Within hours, something changed in the prison. Beings who had not spoken to each other in months started talking. We began to remember that we were not just prisoners from different species. We were crewmates. We had served together. What happened next? A Korthani youngster asked quietly. The human started teaching us things. Not over the communication system where the pirates might hear, but through coded messages hidden in normal conversations. Zarthek smiled grimly. He taught us how to make weapons from mining equipment, how to coordinate attacks across different prison blocks, how to disable security systems without triggering alarms. But more than that, he taught us to hope again. He made us believe that freedom was possible, that we were worth saving, that our people at home still remembered us. Within a week, the entire prison was ready for revolt. 8,000 beings from 12 different species, all working together, all believing they could go home. The cantina was dead silent. When the revolt began, it was not like any prison break in galactic history. We did not fight to escape. We fought to win. Zarthek's voice grew stronger. Prisoners who had barely been able to walk suddenly found the strength to fight. Beings who had hated each other worked side by side. Scientists and soldiers and traders all became warriors. The pirates never had a chance. They expected broken slaves. Instead, they faced an army of people who remembered they had something to live for. How long did it take? Asked Aveltar. 3 days. 3 days to take control of an entire planet. When the human ship Indomitable finally landed at the main prison complex, there were no pirates left to fight. Zarthek finished his drink and set it down carefully. The human captain came to see us before we left. I asked him how they did it. How they turned broken prisoners into an army with just words. What did he say? He looked confused by the question. He said they did not do anything special. They just reminded us who we really were. Zarthek's cybernetic eye flared bright red. But that is exactly what makes humans so terrifying. They do not just fight with weapons or ships or technology. They fight with hope. They make people believe in things that seem impossible. That sounds like a good thing, said an Altarian uncertainly. It is a good thing, Zarthek agreed. When they are on your side. When they want to help you. When they see you as someone worth saving. He leaned back in his chair. But what happens when they decide you are the enemy? What happens when they want you to feel despair instead of hope? When they want to break your spirit instead of lifting it up? The young aliens stared at him in growing understanding. The humans did not rescue us with superior firepower. They rescued us by making us remember who we were. They turned slaves back into warriors with nothing but words and hope. Zarthek's voice became very quiet. If they can do that to help people, what can they do to destroy them? The cantina was completely silent. Zarthek's 3 stories hung in the air like smoke from a funeral fire. The young aliens around his table looked shocked and confused. Even other beings in the cantina had stopped their own conversations to listen. A young Altarian was the first to speak. Her feathers were pale white with fear, but she forced herself to ask the question that everyone was thinking. But they are our allies now, she said in a small voice. The humans fight alongside us. They follow Galactic Council laws. They trade with us peacefully. Why should we be afraid of them? Zarthek looked at her for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. It was bitter and dark and full of old pain. The laugh of a being who had seen too much and understood too little. Until it was almost too late, the young Altarian shrank back in her seat. Allies, Zarthek repeated, still laughing quietly. Yes. They are our allies. They fight beside us. They protect us. They save us when we are in trouble. His cybernetic eye blazed red in the darkness. And that, young one, is exactly why I am terrified of them. The young aliens looked even more confused. A Korthani youngster leaned forward. I do not understand. You just told us 3 stories about humans helping people. Humans fighting against evil. Humans saving prisoners. These are good things. Yes. Zarthek nodded slowly. They are very good things. The humans in my stories were heroes. They fought for justice. They protected the innocent. They never gave up hope. He paused to order another drink. But let me ask you a question. In all 3 of those stories, who were the humans fighting? The young aliens thought about it. Pirates, said Aveltar. And the Hivrak swarm. And the Hivrak swarm. And my people and his people, added a Korthani, pointing at the Veltar. During the Kepler station siege. Exactly. Zarthek said. In every story, the humans were fighting against beings who had attacked first. Who had done something wrong. Who deserved to be stopped. His metal fingers drummed against the table while he waited for his drink. In the first story, we, Korthani and the Veltar, were fighting each other over territory that neither of us really owned. The humans did not start that war. They just ended it. In the second story, the Hivrak swarm had eaten human colonies. Killed millions of innocent people. The humans did not attack for conquest. They attacked for revenge. In the third story, pirates had captured and enslaved thousands of beings. The humans did not invade for territory. They came to rescue prisoners. Anya. The humans did not invade. The humans did not invade. For Moer Dissenter. The humans did not invade. For Mensivwell. For Mensivwell. The young aliens nodded, still not understanding. So in every case, Zarthek continued, the humans were the victims. They were fighting back against injustice. They were protecting themselves and others from evil. His drink arrived. He took a long sip before continuing. And look what they accomplished when they were fighting for survival. Look what they did when they had every reason to fight. When they were defending their homes, and families, and freedom. Zarthek leaned forward until his face was very close to the young aliens. They won, every single time, against impossible odds, using methods that no other species had ever imagined. The cantina was so quiet that they could hear the ancient ventilation system humming in the walls. Now, Zarthek said very slowly, ask yourself this question. What would happen if humanity ever decided that we were the enemy? The young aliens stared at him in growing horror. What would happen if humans ever thought that we were the ones being unjust? What would they do to us if they were not fighting for survival but for conquest? A young Korthani spoke in a whisper. But they would never do that. They are peaceful. They follow our laws. Are they? Zarthek asked quietly. Or do they just choose to follow our laws because it benefits them right now? He took another drink. Let me tell you what I have learned about humans in all my years of watching them. They do not fight when they are angry. They do not fight when they are proud. They do not fight for glory or honor or tradition. His cybernetic eye flared brighter. Humans fight when they believe they are right. And when a human believes they are fighting for justice, they will do anything. Anything at all. The old bartender moved closer, his ancient face grave with understanding. In my first story, the humans starved 2 entire fleets because they believed the war was pointless. They did not see it as cruel. They saw it as efficient. In my second story, humans spent 3 generations turning themselves into monsters because they believed the Hivrak needed to be stopped. They did not see it as horrible. They saw it as necessary. In my third story, humans turned slaves into an army, using nothing but words because they believed everyone deserved to go home. They did not see it as manipulation. They saw it as liberation. Zarthek's voice became very quiet. Every terrible thing humans have done, they have done because they thought it was right. Because they thought they were the heroes of their own story. A Veltar youngster spoke up nervously. But surely they would not attack us without reason. Reason? Zarthek laughed bitterly. What if they decide our governments are corrupt? What if they think our laws are unjust? What if they believe we are oppressing our own people? God one. Reason. What if they look at our society and decide we need to be saved from ourselves? The young aliens looked sick. You see the problem now, Zarthek said. Humans do not see themselves as conquerors. They see themselves as liberators. They do not see themselves as killers. They see themselves as protectors. And when a human thinks they are protecting someone, they become unstoppable. He finished his drink and stood up slowly. His metal leg whirred softly as he moved. The galaxy celebrates having humanity as our allies. Our leaders make speeches about human friendship and cooperation. They talk about how lucky we are to have such powerful friends. Enter Incident 23. How lucky we are. Zarthek looked around the table at all the young, frightened faces. But I have fought beside humans. I have seen what they are capable of when they believe they are fighting for the right cause. And I know this truth that keeps me awake at night. When Reine. He leaned down until his cybernetic eye was level with theirs. The most dangerous enemy in the galaxy is not someone who wants to hurt you. The most dangerous enemy is someone who wants to save you, because you can negotiate with greed. You can reason with pride. You can even bargain with hatred. But you cannot argue with someone who knows, absolutely knows, that they are right. Zarthek straightened up and threw some coins on the table to pay for his drinks. The humans are our allies because they choose to be. Because it serves their purposes. Because they believe we are worth protecting. RJ. Aversant, he started to walk toward the door, then stopped and looked back. I pray to every god I know that we never give them a reason to change their minds. Because if humans ever decide that we are the problem that needs to be solved, his cybernetic eye went dark. Well, you have heard what happens to problems when humans decide to solve them. Zarthek walked out into the station corridor, leaving the young aliens, sitting in stunned silence, around an empty table. The old bartender shook his head sadly as he collected the glasses. In all his centuries of listening to war stories, he had never heard one that frightened him as much as these tales of human kindness. Outside the cantina, the space station hummed with activity. Humans and aliens worked together, traded together, lived together in peace and harmony. And in the darkness between the stars, that peace felt more fragile than anyone wanted to admit.